Folks, if you've ever done a little research on the humble Siamese algae eater, you'll know it's widely recognized in the hobby they're great at eating blackbeard or blackbrush algae. Now, this is the algae that can form on the tips of a lot of your plant leaves. It's also said that juvenile Siamese algae eaters are even better at eating blackbeard or blackbrush algae, but are they really? Do they really do a great job eating it? Well, I decided to do a little experiment here at the den. I've got blackbeard algae and I've got a juvenile Siamese algae eater. That little test coming up right now. I certainly do have blackbeard blackbrush algae going through a little outbreak right now in my 10-gallon tank. You can see the algae there on the tip of the leaf of the hygrophila, but you can see underneath just how much blackbeard blackbrush algae is starting to grow. Of course, it usually starts to grow on the tips of the leaves. On the right-hand side of the tank here are a few of my crypts, and it's really starting to spread all over the crypts and all over the hygrophila. How did this happen? Well, it's simply my fault. I do dose Easy Iron from the good folks at Aquarium Co-op. I love the product. The problem is, in this 10-gallon tank, it doesn't need a lot of iron. I was trying to get more red out of this hygrophila. These are the long stems reaching up to the top of the tank. And really, this tank only needs a little bit of iron every other week. I was starting to dose it once a week, sometimes even twice a week, and this is what happened. Now, you'll see blackbeard blackbrush algae happen if you do overdose iron. It's very, very common, so I had an idea where this came from. Now, there's nothing wrong with little blackbeard algae in the tank, but I wanted to do something to try to control the outbreak. First step is I got my iron dosing under control and went back to once every other week, but I realized, shown here in this video in my 36-gallon bow front tank, I don't have any blackbeard algae at all, but I do have a Siamese algae eater in there. Now, dosing's a little less of a problem in this tank because there's a lot more plants, so the iron is a lot more readily absorbed, and I still dose once a week in that tank. Here's a shot from 2 years ago when that same Siamese algae eater was a juvenile or a teen in my 20-gallon tank, and I never saw any blackbeard or blackbrush algae growing in that tank either. And I'm not seeing any blackbeard algae growth in my 15-gallon crib fried grow out tank shown here, but I do have a juvenile Siamese algae eater in that tank. There are more plants in this tank, and this tank does get an iron dose once every week, and it simply could be a factor that that iron's being absorbed by more plants, but I still wanted to do a little experiment here. In the 2 tanks I have Siamese algae eaters in, there's no blackbrush algae, so I decided to take this little guy and move him from the 15-gallon tank here to the 10-gallon tank, and I wanted to know, will this little guy really eat the blackbeard algae? Probably a good thing I moved him. Had a little injury to his scales, probably ran into a crib in the 15-gallon tank, so at least this will give him a little time to heal in a tank that's a little more chill. Just has my Koi Beta Patriot in it and some lamb chop rasboras and a few celestial pearl danios. So once I put this little guy in the tank, he started to munch on the leaves a little bit, and I really tried to catch him in the act, but every time I would come up to the tank with my phone, this little guy would stop and give me a pose, and most often he would wink at me. So I never really caught him in the act, but I wanted to see what would happen to the blackbeard algae after a couple days. Now, after 2 days, not only did this little guy's injury look better, which was good to see, but some of the algae started to disappear. Again, I didn't do anything with this tank except add the Siamese algae eater. There's not as much algae on the leaves of the hygrophila here. And on the left-hand side, this is before adding the Siamese algae eater. On the right-hand side after day 1, you can see the difference that this blackbeard algae was starting to disappear. Here's a shot from earlier in the video. On the left-hand side, the blackbeard algae that was on one of the hygrophila leaves. You can see on the right-hand side after 3 days, that was gone as well. And on the crypts on the left-hand side, you can see where we were, and on the right-hand side, all that blackbeard algae had been removed from the crypts. So this little guy was obviously eating this. I made no other changes to the tank. I don't know if he was eating it at night, but it was a great sign to see all this disappear, and after 4 days, I couldn't find any blackbeard algae left in the tank at all, and I really did try hard to look at all areas of the tank to see if there was any of this algae left over, and I just simply didn't see any of it at all. This leaf in particular had a lot of it on the tip, but it seemed to be all gone. So the humble little Siamese algae eater saved me from what could have been a much worse blackbeard algae outbreak. And of course, I did learn a lesson from this, and that's to get my iron dosing dialed in. This tank only needs about a half a dose every other week. There's just not that many plants in it, and the lighting really doesn't support deep reds anyway. It's an old LED light. There's not a lot of red spectrum. I'm not going to get real deep reds out of this tank regardless. I've now dialed in the dosing on this tank, dosing a half a dose of iron every other week. With the other tanks, I can still dose once a week. There's a lot more plants in those tanks, and the iron's more readily absorbed, but this still made for an interesting test. In this 10-gallon tank, proof that Winky here, being the only little guy added to the tank, really did get a handle on that blackbeard algae outbreak and started to control it. So in conclusion with this little test here in the den, Siamese algae eaters certainly do a great job eating blackbeard or blackbrush algae. And while you want to control your dosing and monitor that, just know that these little humble Siamese algae eaters are there for you in case you go overboard a little bit. They'll clean up for you. Folks, hopefully that video was helpful. Please like, comment, and subscribe for future content. And as always, thanks for watching.